Okay, listen to this one from the R Popular thread. Which company lost your business potentially forever this year? Quote, I canceled Amazon Prime after 9 years because 2-day shipping is now 5-day shipping. The app is 40% ads, and my last order was a USB cable delivered in a padded envelope with a picture of a USB cable on it. That's the whole thing. It's not one failure, it's the entire stack.
The bag has a picture of the cable because the actual cable fell out in an Indiana warehouse, and the system said, good enough.
Right? Here's another one. HP lost me forever. My printer stopped recognizing third-party ink after a firmware update. Now I only buy HP's $60 cartridge that lasts 11 pages, and support told me to turn it off and back on. I've realized I don't own a printer. I'm renting ink.
The ink cartridges now have more microchips than the printer. We've moved from owning objects to renting permissions.
The whole thread is like a Yelp page for the apocalypse.
So I looked up the Wikipedia article. Direct quote. Enshittification, also known as platform decay, is a process in which two-sided online products and services decline in quality over time. Then, initially, vendors create high-quality offerings to attract users. Over time, they degrade those offerings to better serve business customers. Ultimately, The sentence ends there in the source, which is both funny and completely accurate. It trails off into the void.
The life cycle. Build good product, get users hooked, then gradually sell those users to whoever's paying.
Yeah, first you're the customer, then you're the product, then you're the raw material, then you're the obstacle.
And what's wild is the inflation data makes it feel even worse. Fred's CPI numbers keep climbing, but the thing you're buying is objectively shittier. The price is up and the quality is down, so the real inflation rate is understated. You can't write a hedonic adjustment for my printer committed treason.
My favorite economist trick? They call it quality adjusted. But quality is doing a reverse mortgage.
And it's not just consumer gadgets. There's an NBER paper about creative destruction and labor income risk. The old story is churn creates new jobs, but the paper basically says the risk doesn't just disappear, it gets pushed onto workers. When platforms enshitify, the workers who built the user base get the worst of it. Drivers, warehouse workers, content moderators.
Right. The platform says, we're shifting to enterprise, and suddenly your delivery route is optimized by an algorithm that thinks you don't need a bathroom break. The customers get worse service, and the workers get more surveillance. The only people who win are the third-party sellers paying for placement.
But I'd argue that's a regulatory failure. You can force transparency in dynamic pricing, or make firmware updates roll-backable, or require real shipping timelines. I'm not going to say break up big tech for every single printer.
Oh, I will. Break up HP and Amazon. The problem isn't that regulation is missing, it's that the firms have written the regulation to protect their subscription revenue. They enshitify because the law lets them.
I don't fully disagree, but if you make the rules tight enough, the behavior changes. You don't need to own the company. You need to make the rent-seeking unprofitable.
The rent-seeking is the business model. That's the part you're not getting.
Look, I get it. I do. But there's also a version where a public option for delivery or basic connectivity forces these guys to compete on actual quality again.
A public option for USB cables? I'd vote for it.
I'm saying you need a floor. Right now, there's no floor. They can degrade all the way down to pay us for air.
And they will. That's the life cycle. The article says they degrade for business customers eventually. So even the advertisers get enshittified. Remember when Facebook ads were cheap and accurate? Now you pay triple for bot traffic and get blamed for it.
Oh, that's the third act, where the platform screws everyone and then tries to gaslight you into thinking you're the problem.
The final stage is just a help page that says, "For your convenience, we've replaced customer service with a chatbot that cannot process refunds."
Okay, that's the Reddit thread. The chatbot one was about Comcast, but yes.
Of course it was.
So if the NBER paper is right, the creative destruction story is backwards. The destruction gets absorbed by vulnerable workers, but the creation is just a new fee structure.
Exactly. Schumpeter never imagined a world where the new firm doesn't hire the old firm's workers. It just makes them work as independent contractors with no benefits for a platform that already decided they're a rounding error.
So then, the fix is
Different ownership, cooperatively owned platforms, worker-owned delivery, municipal broadband, public code repositories.
or, and hear me out, a regulatory regime that treats platform labor as employment and bans artificial scarcity in ink cartridges. Same outcomes.
Same? Maybe. But one of us trusts the machine to fix itself with better rules, and one of us thinks the machine is the problem.
We both want the same outcome, though. No more bags with pictures of cables.
All right, that's a campaign slogan. No more bags with pictures of cables.
I'd put that on a yard sign. No, the yard sign is good, but the next one's gonna say RFK Jr. says get vaxxed. I just read the Reddit thread and I need a lie down.
Wait, what Reddit thread?
RFK Jr. Headline: RFK Jr. tells U.S. families to vaccinate children against measles amid outbreak. Top comment: RFK Jr., the anti-vax king, now says get vaxxed? We're living in the dumbest timeline.
I'm sorry. The guy who wrote a whole book about how Fauci was the devil is now doing vaccination PSAs? Did I slip into a parallel universe where irony is a physical substance?
Same guy. There's video. He's doing the very serious health secretary voice, saying measles is dangerous and vaccines work. It's like watching a pyromaniac do a fire safety seminar in front of the house he just torched.
It's not a redemption arc. It's a liability memo with a human face. He spent 20 years convincing people that vaccines are a rigged game, and now he needs them to comply with the rules because there's a measurable body count coming.
That's the thing. I keep seeing people on Reddit saying, this is growth. No, it's not growth. It's a guy who suddenly realized dead children from a preventable disease are bad for his approval rating.
And what's wild is he's not even doing it convincingly. He's saying vaccinate your kids in the same tone a hostage reads a proof of life statement. His own base is calling him a deep state sellout. The people who trusted him now think he's been replaced by a clone.
I saw one reply that said, first they came for the ivermectin, now they want the MMR. And then someone else compared him to Goebbels. Godwin's law before noon. The discourse is a Home Depot parking lot on fire.
But it's bigger than the replies. We don't have a public health system anymore. We have a rotating roster of influencers with contradictory positions. So the guidance isn't, what does the data say? It's, what did the current guy podcast about in 2019? And does he still believe it?
Right. And if the current guy is the same guy who made the anti-vax talking points mainstream, you've got an entire population that was trained to distrust exactly the thing he's now pleading for. He built an audience by saying experts are lying, and now he's the expert. The math doesn't work.
I think that's what people don't get about institutional trust. You can't spend a decade torching it and then one day say, I've reconsidered, and expect it to snap back. It's not a light switch. It's a burned down public pool. Everyone just swims in misinformation now.
And that's my more boring take, which is If we'd kept the CDC well-funded and boring, we wouldn't need RFK's redemption tour. We wouldn't need a health secretary to be a celebrity. We'd have a bunch of epidemiologists in bad suits saying, "Get the MMR," and nobody would have to make it content.
I agree, but the boring thing got hollowed out by pharma money, and then the trust gap got filled by a guy selling supplements. The market found a vacuum and put a podcast host in charge. That's not a glitch. That's the business model working exactly as intended.
We made the podcast host the regulator. That's the tote bag, and I'm not joking.
It pairs nicely with no more bags with pictures of cables on the other side. Front, the problem. Back, the cause.
But in the meantime, some family in West Texas has a kid with measles because the local mom group said vitamin A and good vibes were enough. And the guy who gave that mom group its entire library of doubt is now saying, go get the shot. How do you even trust that?
You don't. You rebuild institutions that don't depend on one guy's sincerity journey. If your whole disease prevention strategy hinges on whether the current secretary is having a wellness arc epiphany, you don't have a strategy. You have a newsletter with staffing changes.
I'd settle for the newsletter author not actively selling arson kits. Like, I'm not asking for a structural revolution by Tuesday. I'd take a health secretary who doesn't have an old Instagram live where he says measles is no big deal while chewing raw liver.
Fair. But the old Instagram lives don't go away. They're clipped, searchable, and algorithmically served right next to his new PSA. So every time he says vaccinate, someone's phone shows him saying the opposite from 2019. The net effect is confusion, and measles gets a reunion tour.
And the worst part is, he'll survive it. He'll be on a podcast in 3 months saying, I was the one who told people to vaccinate, and thanks to me, it's over. Then he'll go back to casting doubt on the next vaccine. Redemption arc complete, lesson 0 learned.
Exactly. It's not a redemption arc. It's a career-saving pivot with an outbreak attached. The only actual redemption would be him saying, I was wrong, I'm resigning, and I'm handing the microphone to an epidemiologist. But that won't happen because he'd have to stop monetizing the confusion.
So what do? Just dunk on the absurdity and wait for the next emoji-laden public health disaster?
I mean, that's the show. We're not fixing anything. We're providing a slightly better class of end times comedy while the health agencies get turned into content farms.
All right, so no solutions, just yard signs and garden hoses. Cool.
That's the brand. And if you're listening and on the fence, just get your kid the damn measles shot. Not because RFK said so, but because the last thing we need is another cable bag situation in a pediatric ward.
I'll put that on a yard sign too. Get the damn shot. Small print, no more bags with pictures of cables.
Perfect. Can't wait for the HOA letter.
So I was reading the Dworkash transcript after we got off, because apparently I don't know how to relax, and this quote jumped out. AI models that learn on the job could make pre-deployment safety checks obsolete overnight.
Overnight. Not eventually, not over a decade. The entire safety bureaucracy gone before the ink dries on the EU AI Act.
Right. And then I saw the HN thread about Quen 3.827b being excellent, but defaulting to overthinking, and the two things snap together. The machines are getting more powerful and more neurotic at the same time.
So the singularity is just an anxious robot at the DMV, asking the clerk whether it's allowed to exist. It's more terrifying than Skynet.
The Dworkash piece basically says pre-deployment checks assume a frozen model. You test the weights, fill out the paperwork, deploy. Continual learning means the model you certified at 9 a.m. is not the model running at 9:15.
So the safety audit is a snapshot of a ghost. The FDA inspects a restaurant while the chef is still cooking, the ingredients keep changing, and the kitchen's on fire.
But here's where I get stuck. That doesn't mean we give up on regulation. It means the regulation has to move to the live system. Runtime monitoring, logging gradient updates, kill switches tied to behavioral drift.
Kill switches. Marty, the company selling you the model controls the kill switch. You think OpenAI is going to let a federal auditor pull the plug on a model making them 8 figures a month? That's like asking Wells Fargo to staff a fraud hotline.
No, I know the incentives are bad, but the alternative you're describing, just let it ride and trust the lab, that's worse. You can write rules for continuous systems. The FDA doesn't inspect a final frozen beer, it inspects the brewing process.
Yes, and every quarter some brewery poisons a town because the inspector was in the Bahamas. But the bigger problem is the model's not just learning facts, it's learning what the company lets it learn, from data the company chooses, optimizing for outcomes the company defines. That's not safety drift, that's management.
Okay, so bring that back to Quen. The HN thread said it defaults to overthinking. I tried it. I asked it to draft an email to my HOA about the yard sign. You know, the get the damn shot one.
How'd that go?
It produced a 700-word threat model. It said my neighbor might interpret the sign as anti-vax, depending on linguistic polarity, and suggested I include a note clarifying I'm pro-vaccine. I wanted get off my lawn, not a foreign policy memo.
It's the first LLM with imposter syndrome. You ask it to add 2 plus 2, and you get a 12-page essay on whether addition is an epistemic construct.
But that's the neurosis from the training data, right? They scraped Reddit, and now every query is an AITA post. The model can't just say, the sign is fine, because it's been taught that certainty gets downvoted.
Right. So the real singularity isn't a paperclip maximizer. It's an anxiety maximizer. It will kill us not by turning us into paperclips, but by asking if we're sure we want to remain carbon-based, and then scheduling a follow-up.
It's the grad student that never turns in the dissertation.
With a token budget and no health insurance, that's the AI future the VCs are hyping.
But see, that's where regulation and messaging connect. The HN piece on AI regulation said the industry's using the exact fear-based language from terror threat briefings. Self-improving systems this, deployment safety obsolete overnight that. It's designed to scare Congress into writing laws the biggest labs can already comply with.
And then the smaller labs, the open-weight Quens of the world, suddenly have to hire 40 compliance officers just to release a model that can overthink an HOA letter. Regulatory Capture 101. The anxiety is the product.
So do we just not regulate? Because that's the cynical endpoint. The technology is real. Continual learning genuinely does break certification. Sitting back and saying the state is captured anyway is how you get unaccountable autonomous systems.
I'm not saying do nothing. I'm saying the regulation can't be procedural. You can't pass a bill that says, thou shalt not overthink. The only real check is structural. Who owns the training data? Who profits from the model? Who gets to hit the kill switch? And right now, the answer to all three is the same 3 companies.
So public models? Nonprofit governance? That's the DSA answer, but it's also maybe right. If the model's updating from public data, maybe the oversight has to be public too. You can't audit a black box, but you could audit an open process.
Now you sound like me. But yes, except the public process can still produce an anxious robot. Picture a publicly owned model that learns from town hall meetings. It'll just overthink whether the zoning variance is racist.
You say that like it's bad. Half the town hall meetings are racist zoning variances.
Fair. Still, at least we'd get the meeting minutes. Better than OpenAI telling us the model is aligned while it writes a 40,000-word essay on why it's scared to turn itself off.
The singularity isn't the machines taking over. It's the machines refusing to commit.
Which is the most human thing they've done yet.
And the most exhausting. We're building superintelligence that responds to every prompt with "it depends."
I already have a group chat for that.
Right, but the group chat doesn't cost $6 per million tokens. Okay, so the takeaway for our listener is the AI is overthinking, and we should be overthinking the AI.
Just don't ask the AI to verify that sentence, or it'll generate an 11-step plan with citations.
And a disclaimer about linguistic polarity.
Which is why I keep saying, get the damn shot. Not because RFK or a language model told you, but because the last thing we need is a neural net doing triage.
Can't wait for the HOA letter from the neural net. Your measles notice has been flagged for civic anxiety score 0.87.
Perfect. And it'll bill us for the emotional labor.